everybody! It's the Pearlo Wisdom Show, the NHL Pearlo Wisdom Show, which we should call the Prize and Pearlo Wisdom Show. That's what we should call it from now on. The Prize and Pearlo Wisdom Show. I like that. The Pearlo, yeah, something like that. We'll work on that. But we are in the house, and Lauren is in the house, and John Whiteshell. I was going to get one of the, I don't know, you were too young for that, but Romper Room. I see Lauren. I see John. Get one of those little, I don't know. Check it out. Lauren will know what it is for sure. Yeah, Kevalankis. Kevalankis. That's,
Yeah. Rest in peace.
that's
He
crazy.
passed away to chest trauma, I think it
Caught a
was. I can't remember
fireworks right
exactly
in the
what it is.
chest or something. Or I guess he fell down and hit his head on cement or something. Like it's
Yeah.
wow. Just boom, just like that. He was just
Jesus.
at in Columbus for there was a NASCAR race in Columbus, and he was just there promoting with
Yeah.
people. I think well, I don't know if it was Merzlikins. I can't remember. They said like a couple days before, and boom, that happens. Like that is
I mean, life can be so quick, and
yeah,
I mean,
24 years old. Wow.
it's yeah. He was a great goalie too. I mean, the guy, he didn't he beat Canada or
Yeah, yeah, he had
whatever,
a huge,
or almost.
huge,
Yeah.
yeah, that year, and he was getting better and better. He might have been a backup or whatever, but huh, it's weird how things happen like that. When I heard that this morning, I was like, what? Oh my gosh, that's incredible. But be careful with those fireworks, boys and girls. Holy smokes. We had something
Yes.
like that happen when I was in school. A kid, like 13-year-old kid died from doing something with fireworks or something like that. I remember that when I was young. I was a lot younger, but it happens a lot. And with some of the things, if you go on YouTube and see what some people do with fireworks, and you'll see how it happens because it's like, what are you doing, man?
hmm
Uh, but yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad. Um, Anywho, well, well, might as well go right into the big game tonight. Uh, the
Perfect.
the They're still going to have 3,500 fans, I guess, in Montreal. Or no, it's not. Yeah, it's in Montreal. That's the case? I haven't heard anything different about that.
Yeah. No, I think it's gonna stay at the 3,500
Yeah,
fans.
kind of odd, I have to say, but you got to just let people do what they do. Like I don't really judge that sort of thing. I find it kind of odd that you have all those
No.
people outside and like everybody else, but
Yeah, I find that a bit odd as well to have like 3,500 fans in the arena, but yet have like 10,000 fans outside. I don't think it really matters by that point, but I'm excited about this game, sorta. It's been like a demolition derby this entire playoffs. I gotta say, every time I tune into the game and I see Tampa Bay score the first two goals of the game, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what's gonna happen here, and I switch over to baseball.
yeah, yeah,
It really has been that type of series. Like, I enjoy it a bit, but see Montreal just getting just pummeled is just it sucks. You don't want to see that during the Stanley Cup
yeah.
Finals. You don't want to see a sweep. You want to see game sevens and overtimes and intense hockey, but this year not so much.
Yeah, and then on top of that, there's going to be sort of a not in the actual books, but in people's minds, a lot of people's minds, because they're going to change the rules now for sure about salary cap in the playoffs. I heard that one of the
Open.
things I thought it was a fact, but it turns out it wasn't a fact. But what they were going to do was that the lineup you put on the ice will have to be under the cap. You can have
Oh.
people in the drink, or you can have people on the like on the roster in the sense of that are not playing that put you over the cap, but the lineup on the ice has to be under the cap. That's one of the things I've heard possible. But the thing is there's
Hmm.
always going to be this asterisk because, and you know what, I was pretty, I've showed my displeasure as well about Tampa Bay. But when you think about it, it's not like it's the only team that has, when teams are out of it, right? All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, injuries just start popping up, right?
Yep.
Like when teams are out of the playoffs and they know it, now all of a sudden injuries start popping up. Would all of those guys been getting surgery and stuff if they were going to be in the playoff race? Probably not. So it's not like
Nope.
Tampa's the only one that's circumvented the cap to do sort of things
I
like that. So
there's been teams like that have done this before. Not as much as what Tampa Bay has done, but it was in the rule books. They seen an opening to take it, and they've done a great job with it. Honestly, even throughout this playoffs, I think they faced some of the most challenging teams, and somehow they're here in the finals, about to sweep potentially the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Right? I mean, we and you were talking in our pre-shows about the playoffs that Tampa Bay probably wouldn't have been able to make it out. They probably would have lost in the conference finals if they made it out because of the fact that they were facing the Panthers and then maybe the Hurricanes. We were saying that they probably would lose in the conference finals. We were totally wrong about that, and here they are 3 games up against the Montreal Canadiens, and their team is just so superior from any other team. It's amazing what they've been able to do this
yeah,
year. Not looking like the team that they were supposed to be looking throughout the regular season, and then coming to the playoffs, they just look like a whole different beast, especially Vasilevsky, who I gotta say has been playing some of his best hockey ever. And Tampa Bay is about to go back to back, right? And we have it. I mean, having back to back so close together is insane, especially in the salary cap era where we weren't seeing very many back to backs for a while, and now we see them pretty close together with Pittsburgh and Tampa.
yeah. Well, I mean, on paper, this might be the best team assembled in the cap era. Like
Yeah,
it's you've got like guys like Yanni Gord and uh, that would be on most teams' top two lines. They got so many guys on that team that would like you can lose. They can lose Killorn and barely even notice it. That's pretty impressive.
yeah, legit,
And
legit. Like it's insane.
yeah, and next year they'll lose a player or two for sure. Probably staple a pick and something to get rid of, to lose Johnson's contract to get cap compliant, and still they'll be easily a
Well,
contender.
that's the thing. They're gonna have so many players ready to go next year. You got Cal Foot. I'm pretty sure Taylor Radish is going to be ready there
Should
for
be.
Tampa Bay. Boris Kachuk might be ready for Tampa Bay to play some depth time next year. You got some players that might be ready to jump in and take over some spots. Right? You still have Matthew Joseph. You still has Ross Colton, who's been pretty
Oh
good
yeah,
throughout the playoffs
yep,
as well.
yep.
Right? I mean, this Tampa Bay team, we've been talking about how they might lose a lot, but once they get a couple of those contracts off the team, this team could still look very solid if their prospects step up the way that they should step up, if they can, of course. But this Tampa Bay team, I don't think we've seen as good of a team as since I think the last time we've seen this powerful of a team was back when Detroit back in '08.
Yeah.
I feel it because that was a pretty
Well, I
strong
mean,
team
you
back in
still got
'08 there for the
Hedman. You
Detroit
still
Red
got the
Wings.
best winger in the league, Kucherov, arguably, but pretty much. Kucherov, you got possibly the best defenseman in the league. You got the best goaltender in the league. Like
Yeah.
what you don't need as strong a lineup as they have to go and do it again next year. You still got Stevens in there, like you said, and there's a couple other guys that might be ready. Cal Foot could be ready next year, like you said, on defense. Um, like
Hmm.
these guys have drafted extremely well in the as far as late first round draft picks and stuff like that. They lost Volkov to Anaheim, who's looking like he's going to be in their top six next year, because they just
Yeah.
basically had to let him go because he was actually too good. They were holding him
Hmm.
back, and they were not, basically said, what, we don't want to tear down your career. Go off to Anaheim where you can play top minutes. And he was probably
And
saying the same thing.
also, but also the guy that they picked up from Anaheim and Anton Moran didn't look too bad there with Syracuse. He had 12 points in 19
There you go.
games. That was the guy that they picked up for Volkov. So, and he's a centerman too. So, with potentially maybe losing out on a couple centermans this upcoming offseason, you got some guys that could potentially take up some fourth line spots there for Tampa Bay. So, you know, this Tampa Bay team is nuts, and if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, don't feel bad. This Tampa Bay team is just insane when you're having Nikita Kucherov putting up 32 points in the
Yeah.
playoffs and Brain Point almost having 15 goals. It's a lot for a team to handle, especially when you look down the lineup and you're seeing Blake Coleman on the third line having 10 points in the
Yeah.
playoffs. And you're looking at the fourth line who has a couple points as well. It's a pretty tough team to beat when you got so many good players. And it was kind of funny because me and you were trying to like build up the Montreal Canadiens to start the series off. We're like, oh, don't underestimate the Montreal Canadiens, and here they are, getting absolute slapped. And I did not expect this. I did not expect the Tampa Bay Lightning to do what they did. I thought maybe Montreal would push back a little bit, and I give all the tips to Tampa Bay. What an amazing series they've been able, and what an amazing playoffs they've been able to put up.
Uh, Bucks was asking if they could franchise tag somebody. We don't have that in the NHL. It's an interesting concept, but I wonder if they'd ever think about that down the road. But no, they can't franchise tag someone. Uh, yeah, we don't have that in the NHL. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason to think that they're not going to be a contender next year for sure. They're still going to be super strong. They can still make trades. I'm sure they'll find some room to get a better backup goaltender for Vasilevsky next year. I would hope that would be about the only weakness in their lineup, even if they do lose like Johnson and guys like that. So yeah, no reason at all. It's winning two in a row now. Does does that automatically or come close to putting you as a like where do you put him as in this cap era as a dynasty?
You know what? Dynasties are always kind of hard to kind of define because there's so many definitions for a dynasty. I always feel like it's three cups and then you kind of become a dynasty. Like Pittsburgh, they were on the cusp of being a dynasty, but it's kind of hard because they went back to back, and it's very, very hard to
Yeah.
go back to back. And every team that has gone back to back are a dynasty. You look back at Pittsburgh, they might have only won those two cups in that back to back, but they were a dynasty just because of the players that they had. And I think you could take a look back at Tampa and I think a lot of people will put asterisks on their two cups that they won. A lot of people have with COVID, being the first excuse that people bring up in the bubble. And then also here now with them being over the salary cap so much, everyone's putting an asterisk over
Yep.
that. But Tampa Bay, I know everyone looks at them as the villains, but you look at it, even if they were to probably be underneath the cap and you have to take away of their few of their depth players, they still have so many young players that could probably jump into this lineup right now and be huge players for them. Like this team is beyond stacked. Like Radish could have been ready this year. There could have been so many players down in that minor league system for the Tampa Bay Lightning that could have been ready this year, and they could have just been a killer team even without a couple of the, like Yanni Gord or
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
Yeah. You got to
So
remember they
I
had
think
to let Verhage go. Look what he did in
yeah,
Florida. My gosh.
right? Like there's probably tons of players in this minor league system that are ready to like pop out and give a 30 40 point season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I think I could put this team in a dynasty if they do go back to back this year just because of how good they did it and the matter of fact of sweeping your opponent in the Stanley Cup final, which does not happen. I think the last time it happened was when Montreal did it to Toronto in 1960, I think it
Wow.
was.
Was it that long ago, really?
Yeah, I think it was the last time that someone got swept in the Stanley
I
Cup
thought
final.
Washington got swept one year.
Maybe.
I think Washington got swept by who? I'd have to think about that one. So, anyways, going into next year, Coach Cooper is there. Maybe we'll start getting Coop will start getting some more because it's tough when you got a great team like that, right? It's sort of like Q with Chicago. He always had that over his head. Although I don't think either one of them care. They won cups, so whatever, doesn't matter. But when you got a strong team like this, but he did some pretty brilliant stuff as well. I mean, in the playoffs this year as well, and he's a great coach. There's no doubt about it. Some
Mm-hmm.
teams next year that will give him a run for his money. The first one that comes right off the top of my head is Colorado with cap space next year. What they decide to do with that could be just absolutely insane. The new dynasty, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being the new dynasty. I mean, that would be amazing. I'm trying to find the quick stat here. I think yeah, there has not been a sweep in the Stanley Cup Final since 1998.
And
Right.
was that Washington?
So 1998, sorry about that, was the last sweep. I think so. Hang on. 1998 Stanley Cup Final or Stanley Cup playoffs. There we go. Um, that was Detroit winning that
And
one
it was Washington. It
against
was
Washington.
Washington.
Yeah,
I
you were
should have known
correct. Yeah.
'98 Detroit for sure. Some powerhouse teams. Like, there's no shame in losing. We just mentioned
Mm-hmm.
the best team since the Detroit Red Wings, but that was like right around the cap or before the cap era or something like that. So they built that team mostly outside of the cap era. But this is the first time in a cap era that we've seen a team like this strong for sure. It was brilliant.
It is. And I mean, you don't really see, and that's saying a lot. You didn't see any sweeps in the Stanley Cup Finals during the cap era. I think every time we've watched the Stanley Cup Final, it's always been really close. It's maybe 5 games, but sometimes usually it goes to 6 or 7. Never is it a sweep in the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, Tampa Bay's brilliance this year in the way that they were able to stop the Dallas Stars pretty quickly and to put them out the way that they
Hmm.
did, and also the way that they put out the Montreal Canadiens is insane. I mean, this team is just definitely a dynasty in my books, and I think they could even win another Stanley Cup after this. I don't think this is just, the last of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I still think there's many more times to come. I mean, Nikita Kucherov is only 28 years
Yeah.
old. He still has a good, what, 5, 6 years ahead
Yep.
of him. And that could be another cup or two for the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially if, once they dump off a few big contracts and get some young players in. I mean, I could see this team winning the cup
Well,
again.
as long as you've got Vasilevsky, you got a chance. That's the thing. That they've
Yep.
always got the best goaltender in the league, no matter what. So, yeah, they definitely have a chance. The other team I was looking at would be, and I think it's a little much to say next year, but if you never know with if a lot of players step it up and maybe they get some more leadership as well. I think the New York Rangers could be trouble next year. You know, Lafreniere was looking good at by the end of the year. The guy looks like he's going to be a beast. Capo Caco is now getting to that point where you could see a step up from that. You've always got Panarin and Z, and of course you've got the Norris Trophy winner in Fox, but you need a step up on defense for sure. But I could see them being scary next year. I don't think winning the cup next year would be in the cards, but with
Being in the playoffs, I think is what they want this year, especially that ownership. I think Rangers so badly want to be in the playoffs right now, and it seems like the way that they fired the GM and the head coach. I feel like they're really going to be pushing for that. That playoffs. And I agree with you. I think they need a bit more of an upgrade on the defense because it's a really young defensive core. I think their top four was like Truba, Lindgren, Fox, and Keandre Miller, and then you also had like Zachary Jones up there as
yeah,
well. They had a really young top six, right? I mean, that's just the way that the Rangers are. They're a very young team, and I think they could potentially start pushing for it. Alexis Laforaine is only going to go up from here. Same with Capo Caco, and Capo Caco actually had a pretty solid season this past
yep,
season for the Rangers. Defensively, I think this guy could be a two-way
hmm,
force for the New York Rangers moving
yep,
forward. And that could be a very big key part for the Rangers moving forward if he could keep improving that defensive game because he had a pretty good defensive game this year. I think he just needs to improve upon that offensive game, and with the years go by, that will come along. I mean, these guys are young, so
yeah.
the offense will
Yeah,
come.
and Lindgren is really good. He's been underrated on
Yes.
that team. He's fantastic defensive
Hmm.
defenseman. And then Miller really took a step forward last year, and he's still pretty young. He's probably going to get better. Yeah, there's a lot to like there. And then of course who was saying that they could be looking at Eichel. I heard about that. I've heard about that. I'm not sure they want to go that direction. It's gonna have to include a Capo Caco. I'm not sure they built their depth enough to do that yet, unless they kind of want to step back to take a step back to take a step forward. So you know what I mean? Like, I think they'd almost lose so much depth that they wouldn't be good enough to. They wouldn't be good, but in the long run, they could be a heck of a lot better than they could be if they didn't do it. You see what I mean?
See that I think the thing is I think yes for them trading away they'd probably have to trade away Capo Caco and maybe another
The,
prospect and
their
then
first,
maybe a
yeah,
pick or two, right? Yeah, so basically I don't think it's that bad because your top six would be Panarin, Eichel,
mm,
Kreider if you want to do that, and then Laffy, Spinajad, and then you would need a right winger, and then you have Strom as your third line C. You still have to get Buchnevich back on the team, and
yep,
Brett Howden and Heidel there. So I think they still have a decent team. I think they would even be better with Jack Eichel being added into the squad just
yeah.
because that top six would be
I think it
nuts.
would really depend on what the package is going to look like because you've got LA holding up there
Yes.
and they look like
Yep.
they're going after Bear. They've got a lot of prospects and a lot of like if Buffalo does it right, the package could be pretty extreme. That's the reason why I say that. But if it's only going to cost you Kako, this year's first, maybe next year's first, and what else were we talking about here? Like that
I
would be
think
like three
what
firsts
I did
because
was
Kako was a first.
I think yeah, yeah, three first, and then you would add in like a B tier prospect, like maybe a Karvatsov or maybe even someone lower down in your prospect system, a defenseman maybe, because they do have a decent amount of defensemen there with Niels Lundqvist
I
and
wouldn't.
Braden Schneider,
I would.
and
Matthew
Matthew
Robertson
Robertson
is a
as
guy
well.
that I would not. I would not. That Schneider guy is turning out to be better.
No,
He's turning
Schneider
out to
was
be
really good.
way better than I thought he was going to be. His offensive game is like went crazy last year, and he could be like, I don't know, um, to have the kind of aggressiveness he has in the defensive game he already has and that offense. Man, he's looking good. So yeah, I think he'd be off the table as far as I'm concerned.
Lauren, I hope the Edmonton Oilers don't go after Duncan Keith. It would be the worst thing in the world for the Oilers to do is to go after Duncan Keith. Klefbom, what I was hearing from his agent is that Klefbom should be able to return next year. He really wants to return. So I think Klefbom should be returning, but we still don't know. We don't know until fall, the agent said. That will know the full extent of Klefbom's injury and his rehab and how that's all going. So we'll know by fall if Klefbom will be ready or not. But uh, in the upgrade on the lefty, I'd rather go after someone like an Alexiak or a McCabe or a Riley. Keith would be such a liability. We don't need more graybeards. We got it in Russell. You're basically picking up an offensive Russell and Duncan Keith. And I wouldn't want Duncan Keith on the Oilers because I know what would Tippett would do. He would be playing him on the top four alongside of Bouchard, and it would just not be the defensive pairing I would want to
I didn't
see.
mind him last year. It was all right. I mean, if they're going to retain and it doesn't prevent us from adding as on top of it, but
But that's the thing. Chicago doesn't want to retain any money right now. I've heard rumors that they've been
no way.
wanting to get DeBrincat
No,
to a huge contract.
no,
They are saying that they're
no,
really not
no.
wanting to trade anyone else.
I'm not.
So
I'm
I've
not
heard
touching
Edmonton's out
it.
of it
I'm not
because
touching it
it's
if they're
just too
not
much,
retaining. Forget it. No, he can.
and they're not. I've heard rumors that they don't want to even retain it. They're looking just to dump that contract off and just be done with it. So I've heard are out of the race, and it's mostly just Vancouver
Okay,
now
Swiss.
that are after Keith.
I'm pretty sure the Tampa Bay will sweep tonight. Montreal has surprised all playoffs, but they haven't surprised at all in this final, so there's no reason to think that they're going to. But yeah, if they're not retaining, I don't want any part of that. So he's
No.
got like probably Benning will take him, probably.
Yeah, that's dude. I actually heard Vancouver. Uh, this is what I would be imagining the room right now. The Sedins sitting there like, oh, I'm thinking about going after Duncan Keith. Sedins are like, oh, dude, what? You thinking about bringing in the guy that we hate the most? Like, I think that's all Vancouver fans. A lot of them don't really like Keith from the rivalry, and he's not that good anymore. He's not the old Duncan
Yeah.
Keith that he used to be, and that would be the thing
I,
with Duncan Keith. But it would be funny
I
if
think the
Vancouver does go
Sedins would
after him,
say,
though.
yeah, yeah, whatever, do whatever you want. We're getting paid. We're getting paid to go
Yep,
golfing and cheer Vancouver. So, they took some pretty gravy contracts there, and they did well. They did well
they
to
did.
pay them in the end, and that's just all that is. So, that's why when they were like, well, what do you think the Sedins are going to do? They're going to play golf, get paid. That's what they're going to do. Yeah.
Most likely.
So yeah, the other option, of course, I suppose, if he really like just wants to head off into the sunset for a few years until his contract is over, and maybe he's got coaching on his mind in the future or something like that, Duncan Keith. Uh, he could go help out Seattle with their young players. Be like another.
I've heard about that too. I've heard Seattle as well could swallow his contract because it's 5.5 million. I think you got to either retain it or or you trade him off to some rebuilding team because he wants to go
Yeah.
off to Western Canada. So that means Winnipeg, but Winnipeg, I don't know if they want to really be in on Duncan Keith. Seattle, Edmonton, I really don't want Seattle to take him. And then maybe Vancouver, but Vancouver barely has any salary cap in the first place to take that full 5.5 unless you tell him to take Louis Erickson, but I don't think Benning's that smart.
Yeah.
And Chicago
No.
wouldn't want to take that anyways because they're looking to unload the chat,
Yeah,
unload
I don't
cap.
think so either. So we got a couple people in here now. I'm just going to let you know, and I'll tell people this throughout the week. Starting next week, I'm going to start doing shows in the evening. I'm going to do Monday, Tuesday, Friday during the day, or sorry, Monday, Wednesday, Friday during the day, and Tuesday, Thursday in the evening. So I'll tell you the times that those are going to be. It's probably going to be about 5:30 to 7:30 Mountain Time, so 7:30 to 9:30 Eastern Time. Just want to change things up a little bit, see how many more people are out there that would enjoy this fine programming, and in the evening when they're off work and stuff like that. So I thought I'd let you know. Okay, tell me what you think about that in the chat. Trade Mitch Marner now.
No.
I it would depend. I mean, I would be open to it, but the package has got to be really freaking good. And
It's
I'm not
basically like
retaining
trying
anything
to
or nothing. It would have to be like a
no.
superb package.
The thing with trading away Mitch Marner, it's basically like you're trading away Jack Eichel. You're never going to win in that deal. You could try to win in that type of deal, but you're never going to win in that type of deal when you have to trade away that type of old star. And that's why I really see when Toronto signed their three big superstars, the amount of money that they
So
did,
did
I
I.
thought it was dumb because in my mind, I'm like, you want to sign these guys are young. You want to get into the cheapest contracts you possibly can get them to, and then later on in the years tell them, all right, I'll pay you the big bucks later on, or you could go to some other team and play. Because then you don't have situations like this where you're stuck with paying your younger players so much money where you can't even fill out the rest of your lineup with some big key members that you need
Yeah.
for a playoff run. And I in my mind, I would love to trade away Mitch Marner or Matthews or Tavares, but you're never
Yeah.
gonna win that deal. Marner's too good at buddies with Matthews. That'd be dumb. They would be
I
dumb to separate the buddies apart.
sorry.
Could you see Nylander?
I would.
But
I think
maybe.
he's 100. I think he's going to come close to 100 points, Nylander. I think he's a brilliant player. Um, But I think you can maybe not win that deal, but in on paper, but sort of win it in the sense that you can get some pieces back to give you more depth than you did
Mm-hmm.
before. But I
Yes.
thought that, and I got lambasted for this because I did a video about it before they signed him, and I said it like 3 times in the video. This is not because I think Marner is bad. I think he's fantastic. This is because they made the stupid move of getting Tavares. I did. That was a stupid move. Like you have Matthews, there's no need for Tavares whatsoever. You could have built.
No,
There was
no,
no
no,
need
there
for
was
that
no need.
deal at all with everything that they did there. And now you're going to pay Marner. Now, that being said, I got to give a little bit here because they probably would have been a lot better off if COVID didn't hit. And they can't blame them for that. The cap would have went up. They
Yes.
could have added more
No.
pieces. They might have been a lot better off. So
Yeah.
you got to give it that. But even then, I still thought that Tavares deal was just, I didn't make any sense to me.
No. And how is Mitch Marner overrated? I know he didn't have a good playoffs, but the guy is what, 20, 24 years old? There's not very many players that, can produce the way that they can at that age when they're first stepping into the playoffs. And especially when you have no depth like how Toronto has and you are all reliant on Mitch Marner. I don't think Mitch Marner is overrated. The guy has put up point
Yeah.
per game years
Yeah.
every single year, and not just
He was
that,
on 100
defensively he's
point.
great.
He's
He's
been
not
on
a
a
goal
100-point
scoring guy.
pace, and he still gets
When
25 to 30 goals.
hmm
What's wrong with that?
and and in the playoffs, he performs actually quite well in the playoffs. I know he never shows up in the playoffs, but the guy in 32
Yeah.
games had
Now
25
you
points in the
could make a
playoffs.
case. You could make
That's
a
pretty
case
damn good.
possibly that those points are stacked because he does play with the best shooter in the game in Matthews. You could make a case he
hmm
probably wouldn't be a 100-point player on some teams out there because he wouldn't have that
No,
guy to
you can
pass
say
it
that for
to.
a lot of
But
players, right?
yeah, you could say that for a lot of players. But yeah, it depends on how you're rating
Mhm.
him. Like, is he better than Goudreau? Probably. Would you say? If he was in Calgary, do you think he would?
Oh yeah, he's better than Goudreau. He's way better than Goudreau. His defensive game alone, I think, brings a key compartment to Mitch Marner's game. And the thing is, like, I know Marner wasn't really performing to, and he does show up in the playoffs because he does. Mitch Marner and Matthews have both shown up in the playoffs before. They're never able to get out of that first round. They usually just choke when it comes time for it to, to
Yeah.
actually get a big goal. This past playoffs, Matthews or Marner weren't scoring any goals, and when that happens, Marner doesn't get any points. And same with Matthews. So I like the both of them. It takes time
Yep.
to be a playoff
Playoff. It
guy
takes time to be a
sometimes. It
playoff
does.
team. Yeah.
These guys are both
It takes
young.
time to be a playoff team for most, unless you do what Montreal did and you bring in Perry's and stuff like that, and that can help. But having guys like Matthews and Marner, you can fill in those spots and get that and let them get experience. And they're in the long run, they could build a dynasty in Toronto. They really could. Especially if the cap starts
Yeah.
going up and stuff like that. But my thing was that I just never really liked their defense yet, and they just don't have any room to get some better defensemen. They had Dermont and stuff like that. That's really
Yes,
they need
that's the
some
biggest
D
thing.
depth for sure, and some guys that can grind it and play combination of the two. Uh, would you rather have
hmm
Sebastian Aho or Marner? Wow, I think it's about even. Except that Aho's a
It
center,
is.
so maybe Aho. But
I Marner's defensive game is a bit better than Aho. It's a tough one because I do like the both of them. I do like the both of them as players, especially Sebastian Aho's
mm,
contract's not bad. It's better than Mitch Marner's. But honestly, I like both players. Marner's more of a playmaker than what Sebastian Aho is, because Sebastian Aho can kind of do both. That would be a tough one, but Sebastian Aho is a centerman, and it's hard to come by
especially
very
ones
good
that could be
centermans.
Selkie Trophy
But I could
candidates
go
down
for
the
either
road.
or.
So yeah, yeah, I think
hmm
I would lean Aho, but yeah, I'd have to really hum and haw about it. It would depend on what the makeup of my team is
hmm
too. Right, that's really what it
Yeah,
comes
that too.
down to. But almost always, I'm going to go with the center. All things being equal, and they're fairly equal, I'm almost always going to go with the centerman, unless I already have one. That's yeah. So good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a freaking killer question though. That's a perfect. Should sounds like fun. Good. I'm glad you're gonna like that, Serrano. Uh, yeah. Yeah. The Toronto had a tough time, especially after Tavares went down. Now I'm going to sound pretty foolish by saying that because I said that they didn't need Tavares. It's just when you got a guy like Matthews, you don't need a guy that makes $10 million playing on your second line. That's all. You could do some. You could definitely do better than, or like you could
Yeah.
improve. You could stretch out your lineup a lot more and get a really good, still get a really good center to play
Well,
there.
that that free agency for that time, they barely had. What did they have for defense? I don't remember them having a very good defense core
No.
when they signed Tavares, because they needed defense. They didn't need Tavares, I don't think, at the time. When I originally seen like $11 million for John Tavares, I'm like, I love John Tavares, but I'm like, that's not worth it for John Tavares. Like, this whole deal is just not worth it for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I thought at the time.
He's a declining
And
asset, you know. And
and for him to play on the second line while you were also having Austin Matthews making
yeah, yeah,
$11 million as well. Like, this year they had that year when Tavares played his first year, they had Morgan Riley, Jake Gardner, Ron Hainsey, because he was playing up on the top pair
yeah,
with Morgan Riley, Travis Dermott, and then they got Jake Muzzin throughout the middle of the year. They
yeah,
also had Zaitsev, who is
yeah.
playing 20 minutes. And then you sign John Tavares. It was dumb. And then every move that they did after that, like maybe Kapanen or Janssen, maybe one of those guys when they actually had value, could have been flopped or flipped for a defenseman. Never did. It always confused me what they just never focused
Yeah,
on their defense. They're like, let's build a new form of hockey and let's go with all offense, but you need a little bit of
yeah.
defense.
It was
When you're relying on all offense, you gotta, especially once it comes to the playoffs, you need a little bit of goaltending and
absolutely, and
defense.
that's I still say that the first thing, um, the other problem that they had there, even if Tavares wouldn't have went down, Campbell's not going to win you a cup. Simple as that. He's not going to win you a cup. So
No.
that
Oh, like, yeah, looking at Bazzi or Price, like, Campbell was
no.
never going to be that. Like, maybe he could have pulled off
Mhm.
some miracle run, but it would have been pretty hard to do that. I don't know. It's a tough spot that Toronto put themselves in with signing John Tavares the way that they did. And I guess we'll see if the experiment works for them. I mean, it hasn't worked so far, signing those big contracts. So we'll see what Dubas does next, because, I mean, they're running out of stuff to do
Toronto
here
is a
sooner or later.
very interesting team this offseason to see what they are going to do and how they're going to find a goaltender, if they're going to find a goaltender, what they're going to do. That's
I've heard Freddie might be
yeah.
coming back. I've heard maybe just going with the tandem of Anderson and Campbell, which I don't mind, because Anderson
I think
has
he
been a very solid goalie over the years for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think a lot of fans just hate on him because of the fact that they just can never
they
get
got
out of the
poor
first round.
defense. They've had
But
poor defense the whole time.
yeah, Anderson's been very good over the years for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know he was struggling this year, but the guy was injured. The guy was injured and getting belted for most of the season. So I think give him some time, give him some rest this upcoming season. They did near the end. They barely even played him in the playoffs, or they didn't play him in the playoffs at all. So I think going forward, I would get him back. Honestly, see if you could get him on a cheaper deal. He would probably be one to come back here cheaper than any other goalie in that open market. You don't want to be dealing with that
Yeah,
open market, especially having to rely on
and then
Campbell
you can kind of
all
hope that
year.
some teams fall off come trade deadline and there's some goaltenders available if it's not working out or something like that. That's
Yep.
basically what I would probably think about doing there. Just simply because of what's out there isn't going to move the needle for you anyways. Like there really isn't anybody out there
Yeah, and
unless
they're not gonna
yeah,
have enough
you can't
money
just go pay
either. They have
Grubauer a ton of money or something like that. They don't have that option. So yeah, I agree.
And would Grubauer even work there? Because you look at the Toronto's defense compared to Colorado's, it's half as great as what Colorado's is, and how well Grubauer would do in that, that area as well. It's a hard market to come to Toronto. A lot of players, don't like coming there because they have to deal with the media. So we'll have to see what they do this offseason. I'm excited because it's a pretty big one. If they don't have any success this upcoming season, especially in the playoffs, maybe Dubas is on the hot seat.
Maybe,
Maybe.
maybe it's possible. I mean, This is not an organization that is afraid to be impatient. So anyways, from Toronto to Colorado, we can talk about Colorado since we brought it up and we talked about it before the stream. Colorado, as you
Mm-hmm.
brought up, I'm leaning right now that Colorado's not going to pay Grubauer what he wants.
Nope, I feel you. I think that could possibly go that way. I haven't really heard very many rumors about Grubauer in Colorado. I haven't heard very many rumors about Grubauer just in general throughout this little bit of this off season. It's been pretty uptight and quiet for Grubauer at least. So I don't know what he's going to be doing and how much he's going to be demanding. But Colorado, they have a lot of money. They have $25 million, so they would like to sign Grubauer. They can, but they need to sign McCarr and Landeskog, so maybe the better bet, because we were talking about they signed Johansson back to another deal for a year, so maybe they're thinking about bringing in Linus Olmark,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
how we were talking about him being
yeah.
their starting goalie. And I think that'd be an absolutely smart idea for Colorado. They did it with Grubauer. They brought him in when he was really young and developing, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, we don't know about this," and they made him into a
Hmm.
pretty damn good goalie. And I think they could do the exact
Yeah,
same thing with Olmark.
that's why we were, I was mentioned that before about Sakic being a genius, as we
Mm-hmm.
know, goes out and gets Johansson. Everybody's like, why are they getting Johansson? Well, maybe because Johansson is friends with Allmark and they'll be talking back and forth all the time and everything like that. And they can chew his ear and they can say, hey, Johansson's like, I hear they're interested in you, Ollie. Come on over, it's great here, blah 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 blah, right? And then you can sign probably
Mm-hmm.
Allmark right now. This is his first big contract. You might be able to get him for four, I think four, 3.5, maybe even. I don't know. I don't know where do you put him because he's been in Buffalo so long. It's hard hard to put a value on it. I suppose it would depend on who else sees what I see in Allmark. I really saw a guy that every time
Mm-hmm.
Allmark was in the lineup for Buffalo, they had a chance. I thought, didn't you?
Yeah, I always love like Linus Ulmark. His analytics support that he's not that bad of a goalie, and especially if you can give him a better team than what he had in Buffalo, his analytics could be even higher. His quality starts was a little bit lower, but great starts for the guy. He was amazing. His bad starts was pretty high as well for analytically, but I mean, if he's going off to Colorado, I think they could make this guy even better. I mean, he's been an upwards trajectory since he entered the NHL, and even this past season, he put up some great numbers. I think he was above a 910 save percentage there in Buffalo, which that team was absolutely horrible, and Linus Olmark was putting up some really solid numbers even there in Buffalo. So I think it would be a very smart idea for almost any team to go after Linus Olmark this upcoming free agency. He would be
Yep.
on my number one list. A 917 save percentage on a team that
Yeah.
is horrible this year is really damn good. And I think at any other goalie that you look at, but maybe Chris Dredger, I think Linus Olmark's the best goalie alongside of Grubauer in this upcoming free agency. He's one of the best.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Lauren, Mrazek likes to smoke weed. What the heck's that all about? How did you get that idea? That's funny. Well, maybe it helps him settle down, man. I know. This funny. When I played, I would say probably 10 to 20% of the goaltenders I knew smoked weed. So it probably had
Mm-hmm.
it definitely would have that effect on a person, and certainly a laid back guy. Um, but yeah, I would. The interesting thing is, like I said, what's the market for Allmark, and who's going to see that value um, out there? I would think that Stevie Eiserman seems like a pretty good analytics guy. They need a goaltender there. I think he might be in there, unless because Grice is going to go. But the thing, maybe he's lining up. I could see that. But I don't know if there's many teams that would identify it as much as we just did, or Sakic might. And you might get him for 3.5, 4 million for 5, or say 4 million for 5 years, or something like that. If nobody's in on it, maybe you get it for less. he's a big question mark there. Uh, I believe.
He is because of injuries, I think, is the biggest mystery about Linus Solmark. It maybe might be because of his injury history, but I mean, push that all aside, the guy is an amazing goalie, and I would, yeah, I could probably see around 3.5, maybe even less than that. Maybe 3.25 because he just got came off a $2.6 million contract. Or maybe this guy signs back with Buffalo, maybe even. Who knows what
Well,
Linus Olmark will really do? Because I haven't really heard too much rumors about him either. I don't think I heard very many rumors about the goalie's point in general. It's a speculation between people where people think these goalies will be going because there hasn't been very much talk about the goaltendings around the league. It's been pretty quiet. It's been mostly like Hamilton, Keith, and a little bit of Hall, and a lot of Seth Jones because I heard the Blackhawks they're really trying to make some pushes. Have you been hearing about the rumors that they've been going
yeah.
after? Like Seth Jones,
Hmm.
Dougie Hamilton. They're looking to clear some cap to make some serious push. Do you agree with what Chicago's doing? Do you think they're ready for playoffs? Like
Uh,
I don't know. I feel like they should still be rebuilding.
I'm on the. You know what? They surprised me with Lankinen. I didn't see that
They
coming.
did.
And there are some organizations where my opinion I put very hesitantly because you're talking about Bowman here. Is one of the greatest, if not the greatest mind ever in hockey. Who knows? Like on face value, looking at it, it doesn't appear so. I mean, it's a very young team. Taves will be back. Um, Keith won't. Maybe it's because you want to go a guy like Hamilton or Jones because they'll build with the team and it's like a 2 3 year build type thing. And a Hamilton's only going to be 30, 31 there, by the time they get to where they're honestly going to be a contender. So they're just, Hamiltons don't come around every day. So,
No, they don't. Well, I mean, this team could clear up a lot of salary cap because right now they have 6.2. I've been hearing rumors about both Keefe and Dahan. And then if you keep Seabrook and Shaw on the LTIR, that will eat up cap there. And then that's basically it. Once you get those two big guys off, you clear some decent cap to maybe go after a defenseman. But I just still don't see this team being a contender if they are to pick up Seth Jones and pay the amount of prospects to go after that guy, I think it would be dumb
oh
to
yeah,
go
because
after
they got to
Seth
make the
Jones,
trade too with
especially
Jones.
for
They got to make
Chicago.
that trade. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, Seth Jones, too, you got to let him play an offensive game. If you try to make him what Tortorella made him out to be, and I love Tortorella, but he held on to it too long. You got to let him go. He's never going to be super great defensively, and he's one of those guys that has to
no,
play on an offensive flow to be decent defensively. So,
Lauren. Lauren, I don't think you want Seth Jones. Seth Jones, I don't think would fit Carolina. You guys already have too many offensive guys, like with Brady Shea and Jake Gardner. I don't think Seth Jones would fit the
yeah,
team for Carolina. And honestly, I'm not a big Seth Jones
uh,
supporter either because he
yeah,
just did not
I'm
look
more of
very
a
good this
supporter
past
than
year.
you are, but I understand why people are not a supporter because he hasn't looked good the last 2 years. I just think if he gets the right coach, if he
No.
goes into the right system, he could be very valuable. But but it's going to have to
Hmm.
be the
And,
right
and
right
that
system. That could
totally
totally
happened.
happen. But I agree with you. His last 2 years have not been good. So
And I think that's the problem is because I think a lot of people, especially the analytic people, and even me, like you look at it, you see the rumored ask for Seth Jones, you're like, this is way too much. I hope my team doesn't go after this because it's a big risk, right? Because you would have to have that coach
yeah,
fit with Seth Jones and be able to get him to back to that top game, and that doesn't happen on a
yeah.
regular basis, you know. And John Reichel, the Leafs wouldn't want Seth Jones. That would not fit the team, especially with Morgan Riley there. I don't think Seth Jones would be the
No, I don't.
perfect fit. Especially you want someone that's proven. Seth Jones over the past 2 years he has not been the guy that he used to be. He's just been a shell of himself over these past two
I don't
years.
know. I'm not going to say it wouldn't work out in Toronto. I just think for them, it's a big risk and not really the type of player I'd be going
Hmm.
for in Toronto right now. But I would be looking more like guys like Lindgren and guys like that in Toronto. That's really what they need, a
Depth.
solidifying defenseman that can play, maybe put up some offense, but more working on the slick skating defensive defenseman. I think that's where
Hmm.
Toronto really. Off the top of my head, I don't know who that would be, but what the heck was I looking at? Going back to Allmark, a few places,
Savard.
Savard, yeah, Savard, a few places that Allmark might be, might we just talked about it. Toronto, if they don't keep with Anderson, could be okay. Edmonton
Edmonton.
would be fantastic. Maybe he wants to grow if like Arizona, but if he's going to do that, he might as well just stay in Buffalo. And I think you're right. Buffalo might be the best place for him because there's nobody in Buffalo who's going to take that number one spot for him from him right now. So he would have he could get number one
Hmm.
money there. Just keep on staying there. They got Granado. They looked a lot better in the second half last year. Maybe he just wants to keep on going there. But it's possibly that it was so toxic there the last little while. He just wants out of that environment, which I don't blame him either. So, but okay, as far as Jones, like the thing I was going to say about Jones is he hasn't been on a team that's allowed him to be him yet. He was in Nashville, which doesn't really, unless you're a Josie who can play both sides like he
Hmm.
does so well, and he's not that. In Columbus, of course, Tortorella didn't have the team to play the way you need to play a Jones. So where would he go? I think Winnipeg might be a place, but again, they need a defensive guy. They don't really have enough to no, because
That's a
you got
risk.
Pionk there already. More, yeah. No, that's not really a great spot either. It's hard to find a good spot for him, to tell you the honest truth. It really is.
And like that's the thing, like Seth Jones, he wasn't that bad back in
Yeah, he just
2019. It's been I think it's just been the COVID years. It's been bumpy. Like Seth Jones, I am, back when Seth Jones was a rookie, I thought he was a good player, with Columbus when they were actually a good team and, Werenski and Jones. Just nowadays, I hate how everyone just thinks that, like, Seth Jones will be great forever. And, same with Duncan Keith. I always see that with, a lot of Oilers fans right now, especially the media talking about Duncan Keith and how great he is. Problem is, yes, you could have a great beard or whatever it may be, but that player's never going to always stay on that right track. Sometimes it might be a coach that puts them off, or just might be that they're just declining a little bit, right? And I think with Seth Jones, it might be Tortorella, and it might have been just that team was just going downhill because it was. Columbus was slowly going downhill. Or maybe it was just Seth Jones also going downhill. That's why he's a huge risk, is because he was not playing very good over these past 2 years. And same with Keith. You can't always just look at back in, 2015, 2018 and be like, this guy was formerly good back in the day, so let's pay him, a first round pick for Seth Jones. I would like to see what they did, how Colorado did for Devon Taves, right? Devon Taves was worth more than a second or 2 seconds. That's what Seth Jones would be worth, in my opinion, right now. It would probably be, 2 seconds, maybe even a first. And a first is pushing it for Seth Jones. I would pay 2 seconds for Seth Jones to hopefully bounce back for your team. But Kekalainen's smart. He's a smart GM, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get as much as
Oh
he
yeah,
can from Seth
he
Jones.
knows the GMs to call right off the get go. You think nobody's worth 7 million? I don't know what that means. I think you're talking about in general.
Maybe they were talking about Anderson because John Weichel is saying that Frederick Anderson wants 7 million, which I just read an article about that. But
Why are you going to
I don't
pay
know.
for that?
That's
That's a
rumored.
rumor.
That's
There's no
rumored that
way you're
it'd
going to
be at
pay in
seven
this
million
cap world
dollars.
a goaltender that was injured all year last year $7 million. I just don't see it. But Lauren
And
said San Jose for
how did
Anderson makes sense. It does if he takes because San Jose's got to take some risks there and like kind of cross their fingers moves where they can get guys cheap and hope they're not injured or stuff like that, right? Like I think that's what they have to do in San Jose. Um, so I think that's a really good point, Lauren. Uh,
Anderson, man, you'd be swallowing so much into the goaltending today, or into San Jose there with Martin Jones and then adding Anderson. I think San Jose just got to play it patient. I think that's
yeah,
the honest thing with them. They got to play it patient. I know that they're probably wanting to rush and be a playoff team, and I've been hearing their season tickets have been plummeting. So, which probably means the ownership is probably going to push the GM to make some more stupid deals, is what
probably.
I'm thinking San
Yeah,
Jose is going to do because they want to be a playoff team. There's no doubt about that. This is a team that always wants to be a playoff team, but the thing is, they're not that anymore, and they don't have the money to afford anyone anymore, especially with the amount of free agents they got this year and the amount of money they got swallowed up into D-men. They got 30 million into
oh,
D-men right now, and Carlson, Burns, and Vlasic. It's insane.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, and that's why I think that San Jose has to take some risks there to if they're going to do something like that. And Anderson, if he's willing to sign for 2.5 or something, or like a performance bonus laden deal, maybe, because Jones ain't going to do it. Jones is not bringing you there. I mean, they've gone through goalie coach after goalie coach after goalie coach. That contract is an anchor. They got so many anchor contracts in San Jose, and now it's coming out that Kane again has pissed everybody off in the room, and everybody wants him out. So you got that too. Like, what a fire! It's a tire fire there in San Jose. I think they might be the worst off of any franchise right now.
Well, like we all seen like it was kind of like I think San Jose was like when I seen them and they were still trying to push and they made the Vander Kane move and then they made the Carlson move and then they signed them like this is gonna backfire. They might have one or two good years and it'll backfire. And that Evander Kane deal has backfired massively. The guy is pretty much a cancer, and we've known it since he
Yeah,
came into the NHL. No offense against Evander Kane, but he has been a very troubled kid throughout the NHL. Remember when he got that huge contract extension with Winnipeg and he was practically going off to Vegas, holding money to his face? He's an arrogant guy, and he'll create that little bit of the toxicity in that room. We have seen it with almost every team he's gone to. Usually they don't end up in the playoffs. The guy's only had 29 games in the playoffs, and that's
yeah.
all with San Jose. Not once did he make it to the playoffs with Buffalo. Not once did he make it to the playoffs with Winnipeg. And I want this guy to excel because he's a good
Darn good.
player. Vander Kane's a
Such a good
very good
player.
player, but he's
Yeah,
just being an idiot. And the thing is, he's 29 years old and he hasn't grown up yet, and that is nuts,
yeah.
nuts.
It's absolutely insane. I mean, yeah, yeah. You mentioned that happened in Winnipeg. I mean, that's not a rumor. That is truth. It was all over the place. Like he was on
It
social
was on Instagram. He
social
posted it
media
on
everywhere.
Instagram.
He's like holding money and throwing it in the air, and now he goes bankrupt. So yeah, he's
Yep.
not the sharpest knife in the drawer, to say the least. That's for sure. Uh,
You know what? One player that I could see being the kind of the exact same player as an Evander Kane is
yeah,
Tony DeAngelo. Good, but locker room
crazy good,
problems. And it's the same with Evander
crazy good.
Kane because GMs seem to cannot stay away from these players because they're too good. But then it just ruins the locker
Yeah,
room, it seems like. And I was hearing rumors about Tony DeAngelo going to Montreal, I think it was. I think Montreal almost had a place, like a deal in place with DeAngelo and was going to bring him into Montreal, which a lot of fans weren't agreeing with.
for some reason, I think Jones might fit out well in Montreal, but I don't see them having the space to have him in there. Uh, but yeah, D'Angelo. I mean, Montreal is an interesting city. It's you can kind of get. I think they might understand. I don't know. D'Angelo was the problems he had was very his right wing politics and stuff. He was like over the top crazy with
Yeah.
it or something like that, and just drove people crazy. And then
Yeah.
whatever he did with that, you put two and two together. He said something to a Russian goaltender, a right wing politics guy. Yeah. And then it's like so bad that they're just like, you're never going to play again. Almost a point a game defenseman. Like this guy
But
has got to
like
be saying some crazy stuff.
it's yeah, And that's the thing that doesn't make any sense for me either. It's like, why is Montreal thinking that they could pick him up and be a fit there? Because Jonathan Drouin, they picked
Yeah.
him up, and he had some problems, but they were never able to fix them. And will the same thing happen to Tony D'Angelo? I think if he goes there, it'll just stir up the locker room even more. I'm not a big fan of the move, but uh, going back on the Vander Kane, yeah, it sucks what's going on for San Jose right now, but they kind of shot themselves in the foot with the amount of dumb contracts that they have signed, especially to the older players, to Vlasic and to Burns and to Carlson. They
Well,
did
you
shoot
think
themselves
about
in the
it.
foot.
We're going to go to break here soon, but he got drafted by Tampa in the second round. Stevie Eiserman basically
Hmm.
like threw him out like yesterday's garbage, and he hadn't even
Yep.
played a game there yet.
Yep.
So like just the rumors and just stuff he heard, whatever he was saying in his junior years, they threw him out.
Because I think he got suspended in junior too for saying something really stupid
Yeah,
to another player too, and his dad is kind of the
which
same
doesn't
way as
surprise me.
well. I was watching a little bit of a documentary on it, but yeah, I think a lot of it probably stems from his dad. I think for Tony, and he just
Yeah,
looks to him, and that's the way he
yeah.
plays out on the ice, and especially his personality is kind of formed to that. Because I think he's a little bit
Oh, is that right?
Italian. I think.
Lauren said to go to Arizona, but I was just
I
going to
think so.
mention they pawned him off on Arizona,
He was
and
in there.
Arizona threw him out as fast as they could. So, yeah,
And Arizona doesn't do
no,
that very much. If they see a good player, they usually
yeah,
like to keep him, but they've
yeah,
seen the troubles. Sent him off to
crazy.
New York.
Anyways, we're okay. We're gonna go talk to the doggies here. We'll be back in a couple minutes, and well, there'll be much frolic. You just come back for the frolic, okay? And remember, we will be going. I'll talk about it when I get back because everybody's left now because they don't want to talk to the doggies apparently. But okay, here we go.
Greetings. This is Steel Flyers from the Steel Flyers All Sports Network, and we have two very special guests. We are delighted to be joined by Tracy Musser and Nicole Howard from the Canine Country Club Resorts. Tracy and Nicole are both managers for CCC Resorts and work at the Windsor or at the club, one of two locations both in Manheim, Pennsylvania. Congratulations on your 30th year anniversary of being in business. Let me start off by saying this. Steel Flyer stands behind this company 100%. Taken care of Steel Flyer's furry friend for the last 2 years now, and they are a one-stop shop for everything your furry friend needs. In fact, let's find out what our friends at CCC Resorts offer. Nicole, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. What are some of the great boarding services that you guys offer, and what do we have to do in order to get our furry friends taken care of when we are unable to travel with them?
Well, we like to bring everybody in for a tour first. That way they can see the behind the scenes, they can see where they stay, they can see where they play, and then we explain all of the fun things that we can add on to their reservation, whether it be one of our packages, either a nature walk, a ball time, or even a cuddle time.
Oh, wow, that sounds great. Boy, it sure sounds like a resort to me. So how are you today, Tracy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Tracy, tell me, is it true that you guys have both an indoor and an outdoor pool at the Windsor location?
It is true. We've got one of each, so we're able to offer year-round swimming. The indoor pool is a great option for dogs who are swimming for therapy or rehab. It's got that sloped entry so they can wade into the water. Our outdoor pool is a little bit larger and it's 4 foot deep the whole way across. And both of them are saltwater pools, so it's really easy on the dog's skin and coat.
Wow, that's very awesome. So then during the summer months, you have a much deeper pool outside and then a sloped entry shallow pool indoors for the dogs. Tracy, tell the folks how we can get some pool time.
Well, the first thing everyone does is come for an intro swim. We use that time to make sure the dog is comfortable in the water. We make sure they know how to get out of the pool safely, and we go over all the pool rules and etiquette with the clients as well. After that, they're able to schedule private appointments where they have the pool to themselves, or they can invite friends and have a whole group swim going on.
So after a dip in the pool, then it would have to be off to the groomers, right? I mean, our furry friends cannot go out looking their best. Nicole, what are some of the great services your top notch groomers provide?
Our groomers, they specialize in full service grooms. We can do the basics, whether it be just a bath and a brush out or a blowout. Or for the extra pampered pooches, we can do nail dremels, we can do deodorizing soaks, and also facials.
Wow, man, that sounds like a resort if you ask me. Tracy, I know one of the main programs here at CCC Resorts is the WAGS program. The Steel Flyers dog is enrolled in this program. So why don't you tell the folks what is involved in this and how they can get enrolled?
Yeah, the WAGS program is our primary daycare option at the Windsor. It's designed to be a structured program for people who are looking for a set routine for their dog. They all come on the same days each week, which allows them to have set friends, and we know exactly what's going on with each group. So we do a little bit more activities and we build more into their daily routine there. But we've got other daycare options as well for the people looking for a little less commitment. We do an hourly care where you can drop them off and just pay by the hour. We also do a day stay option, which is great for the dogs that prefer human friends instead of making friends with other dogs. And then we have a traditional daycare option as well if you're looking for the occasional outing for your dog.
Wow, there you have it. A full service groomer, a daycare program, and an indoor and outdoor pool. What more could you ask for? Sure seems like CCC Resorts has everything covered. Remember, DOG, depend on God.
Hi, everybody. We are back, and we're still talking about whatever would have happened with D'Angelo there. I didn't know there was a documentary on it, apparently. So you can actually check it out. I can't believe the father would do a documentary on it.
Well, I think it was like a little video that some YouTuber put together talking
Okay.
about Tony.
Okay.
And then there was like I think before the draft there was a little video made about him and interview with his dad and everything like that. Yeah, so he got suspended for 8 games for following a violation of the league's harassment and abuse/diversity policy. So I think that was with yeah, he was with the Sarnia Sting, and that was against the Guelph Storm of 2014, and then he got suspended for 8 games. And I think there was later on he got 2 games suspension for an abuse of an official as well,
Yeah.
and also ejected for another abusive official. So he's had some history,
Wow.
especially with Sarnia there.
That's crazy.
Good, hell of a good defenseman. Can produce so many points, but just has some personality problems.
Yeah. Well, maybe he'll end up going to the KHL. That's about the only thing I can think of now. I can't see anybody that has that kind of record, anybody lining up for him now, especially with the way the NHL is going now,
Yeah.
which I don't think is a bad thing. The hockey is for everyone and all that stuff like that. I think it's fantastic, and certainly those sort of things don't line up with that. So that's just going to get you in a much more trouble for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what I think, how long, lagging a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't keep on going for a while now. I don't know.
Hopefully.
Oh, you know what? I'll see if I can take some things off of here.
There's a video playing in the background or something.
I don't think there is. Maybe over here. I'll take all this stuff off of here. Let's try that. See if it goes now back to normal again. Yes.
Perfect.
Everyone is for hockey. Okay.
This spiking. Oh.
I'm trying to get rid of as much stuff here as I possibly can. I don't know why it's doing that. They shouldn't do that. I got a couple things in my going, but I have to use them for the stream because we're going to be talking about it. So is that helping out? Nope, doesn't appear to be.
I think so.
Is it?
I think we're good.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Yeah, is it working for you?
I think so. It was working for me.
Let's see. Okay, well, I don't know. We'll keep on going. We'll see how it works. Because people hopefully will be coming up because it works on my phone just fine. All right.
Yeah, same with me.
Where were we here? We were talking. We were talking about him, and
Yeah.
I guess we could go into something I was going to be doing. Like I said, I was going to be doing a video about, and we could start talking about how you. Okay, I'll get your perspective on this. If uh, if you were Seattle, what
Hmm.
direction would you be going into this expansion draft? Which way would you be going in this expansion draft? What would you be trying to acquire? How would you be using your leverage, whatever you think that leverage would be? Uh,
I guess there's a lot of things that go into it because we only get to see like the players factor. We don't know what the owner's thinking in this factor either because the owner could be wanting you to push kind of like what Vegas was with Foley there. He kind of wanted to get that Stanley Cup, especially after the first year. But I think with the Kraken, honestly, looking over the available players, if they're able to get somebody like an Eichel or Tarasenko or someone in that high All Star standards, maybe that I could see them put else. But in my humble opinion, I think they're going to rebuild. I think they're going to try to get as much picks as they can, make really smart moves, bolster up on cap, and just try to do what Vegas did right off the get go. Get some decent players, but also try to get as much picks as you can to build up that future because you look at Vegas, if they didn't trade away a lot of their picks that they had Eric Branstrom, they had Nick Suzuki, they had some pretty good damn young players that they kept going with the way that they had that team and not do any trades. They could have had a very nice young team there in Vegas. I think for Kraken, I would bolster up on picks and try to draft as well as I possibly can going into the first year. That's what I would do if I was Kraken GM.
yeah, I would be doing that too. Now, acquiring those picks, uh, like for instance, a big one. Let's say like let's just do the obvious one. Okay. We know that Tampa Bay is going to want to get some. They have to get cap room. There's no doubt about it. There couldn't be any other team out
Yeah.
there that has a least amount of leverage going into the expansion draft. Um, so now they're going to be called. They might as well just call up Francis. And we all know that they tried to get rid of Tyler Johnson for free. If you're
Hmm.
Francis, what kind of leverage do you think you have here? What kind of package could you get to get to take Tyler Johnson?
Take Tyler Johnson, probably would have to be maybe a pick. And I mean, what was it for? I think it was Kravoski, right? They did a deal with the Islanders. I can't remember, but I know that deals like this usually happen, and it's usually either a first round pick or a big time prospect, or both of them combined. And I think you could probably see maybe a first round pick and a B tier prospect, like maybe a Cal Foot, or maybe they throw in Eric Cernak and they tell like, don't pick this player, and we'll give you Cernak, and we'll give you Johnson as well to take off, or like you pick Tyler Johnson, we give you Cernak and a pick. I think that could possibly happen for the Tampa Bay or for the Seattle Kraken, is they could possibly get a pick and a solid maybe defensive prospect, forward prospect, whatever it may be. I think they could pick up someone decent from Tampa Bay if they do get or tell them to take Tyler
I
Johnson.
think they can get their first next year. I think they can do it.
I think that's the only pick that they have
Yeah,
because Tampa Bay traded away their pick this
and
year,
then
so they would have to.
Joseph and somebody like that. That's what I was thinking.
Does Bris? I mean, Bristol might. I mean, does Bristol want to do that though? Maybe he would want to trade away a Gord, or maybe a Palat. I mean, Palat would suck to lose just in general, anyways. But and a Yanni Gord. But would it be smart those guys
before the
to
draft,
maybe,
before the expansion draft.
yeah, before the draft
Yeah,
pick?
that's what I would say
Maybe
too. But
even
then whoever
because,
picks them up is going to have to add that to their protection list too, right? So they're going to lose a player.
yeah, well, yeah, uh, I mean, what could they do? Because I mean, I would try everything in my will to try to not lose a first round pick again this year. I think for Tampa Bay, because you don't want to lose like. I mean, they do got a Stanley Cup, so I think it doesn't really matter what they do because they went back to back. It's a tough one because I think if they trade away Gord or Kilroy or any of those guys, I think they could get away with not trading away a first round pick to some other team. But maybe if they trade away Cernak, but Cernak's such a huge defenseman for them. I think it's a tough situation just in general for Brisbois and what he does for this team because you can go so many different routes and it could end up in so many different ways. But if I was Seattle, I would not be giving any break to Tampa Bay.
No.
I would be hardballing them the entire time. Like we know you need cap, so give us the picks that we want, and We'll take Tyler Johnson off your hands or whoever you want.
Yeah, it's hard to lose a guy like Palat. Killorn is a guy that you could possibly live without and be able to replace it. There are teams out there that could take a Killorn and still be okay, like Buffalo, for instance. Buffalo could take a Killorn
Yeah.
and still be okay for their protection list. Possibly Detroit could do that and still be okay. He's 31 years old, though.
And that's the biggest problem too, is that Tyler Johnson has a no trade clause, and same with Kilroy. So Kilroy submits a 16 team no trade list, and Tyler Johnson submits a 20 team trade list. So they probably might not even have Buffalo on that list too. Tyler Johnson can be available for the expansion draft easily though, because he doesn't have no movement clause. So
Yeah, he did open up his no movement though because they were trying to trade him for free. So basically, he was like saying, "Oh, we'll go just about anywhere." He's that's the thing. He's such a nice
yeah.
guy. It's hard to do that to him. But
Well, yeah, last year he had like a full blown no trade clause. It wasn't even modified or anything. This year it's actually modified. So he submits now a 20.
yeah,
But he did open up that no trade clause that he originally had to be traded to go anywhere, which was really nice of him
yeah.
because they needed some extra salary cap. But it seemed like no one bid on Tyler Johnson. Do you think that's going to be the same way this year again?
Well, I think, like I said, they might have to do what we just said. They're going to have to, like they might,
Not
because
to put a first
everybody,
round
they have
pick.
no leverage. So wherever he goes, they're going to have to give something up with him. However, I do
Yeah.
like what you said about trading somebody else other than him and you could get an actual return because the leverage is that player is really good and there's a lot of players that are going to want that player.
Because here's my kind of what I'm thinking. Now you're probably gonna have to trade away two guys. It's either Kilroy or Yanni Gord, Tyler Johnson, one of those guys. You trade away Kilroy or Yanni Gord or Andre Platter or whatever it may be, and go and get some picks. So then you could trade those
Yeah.
picks when you send off Tyler Johnson off to Seattle. That's what I was kind of thinking just right now because I think that would not be that bad of an idea for Ron Francis to trade away one of your higher salary cap guys in Yanni Gord, try to get some picks. I mean, he has a no trade clause, so it'd be pretty hard to trade him. But somebody like a Kilroy, trade him off to some team that would want him because he's a useful guy. He's not very expensive for the next 2 years to be a decent third line guy. Wouldn't be a bad guy for any team, especially since he's been performing quite well in this playoffs. Could be a huge playoff performer for you. So I think honestly, I would trade away Kilroy, maybe pick up some picks, and then trade away whatever you got in a young prospect and some picks to trade away Tyler Johnson to Seattle.
Yeah, if you got um, yeah, if you got to trade them both away, and it looks like they might have to. Killorn could go to a lot of places. Just imagine Colorado. Colorado, uh, uh, I think the Islanders might be interested in somebody like that, and they got those extra picks from Tays. Uh, Maybe I don't know if that would be wise, but it does seem like something that Lamorello would do. Chicago Blackhawks, if they're really doing what they say they're going to do, may be interested in something like that. Uh, yeah, it's possible, and they could. The thing is, if the Islanders did it, it would screw up their expansion guys that they would put out there. So, um, but
Yeah, that's the thing. It would have to be made before the expansion draft, and I don't think we're going to be seeing. I don't know. We could potentially see a lot of moves. I don't think we're going to be seeing like big blockbuster moves where we see like a certain player being sent over to another team until the expansion draft is done. Because there's some teams in a really good spot, but if they were to take more in, like for example, the Edmonton Oilers, right? If they were to sign anyone else, or add anyone else to that offensive core, they would have to add them into that expansion draft list. So I think you might see a lot of teams wait until the draft if they are going to be making some trades.
yeah, Lauren said about how did they handle it in the '90s. I think that was with expansion. The expansion was so set up so
Oh,
bad back then that
it
you
it
didn't even
was
care who you lost. Like nobody even cared.
half the time, like if you needed to exceed, like get like a goalie, for example, because I think every team needed to expose a goalie, they would legit just go sign some random bum and expose them for the team. Like there was not a lot of good players in that expansion draft. I mean, if you take a look at it, I think you'll see Martin St. Louis, especially in that. I think it was the Columbus, Minnesota one. That one was horrible. But every single team that came in through the expansion draft back in the 90s, going into the 2000s, was horrible, which is the reason why Minnesota and Columbus still suck to this day, was because they got such a bad expansion draft. And the reason why I don't mind the expansion draft that we get
Yeah,
nowadays,
I
honestly.
prefer it. And then Bettman had to put in this, basically tell the refs, like, don't worry too much about clutching and grabbing because these teams aren't going to exist if if you don't let them slow down the other team. That's what happened. And, the Anaheim would never have been able to draw people because they would have been if they would have just let it go like it is today, that Anaheim Ducks team would have hardly won a game if they won a game at all. Like it was that bad.
Yeah.
So, and that was because the owners worked it out. We don't want to give anybody up. We still want the money. They want the team. They either take it or leave it. And
And
Bettman's like, well,
yeah.
we do want to expand. You know what I mean? We do.
And it wasn't very much to get into the NHL either. Like nowadays, to get into the NHL as a franchise, I think it was like $600 million for Seattle or something to buy their way into the NHL. Back in the day, I think it was like 10 million dollars to
Oh, really?
buy yourself a team. 60 million. I think it was I think it was around 60 million to pay for yourself to get into the league for the expansion draft. And that's why they didn't get very much. Like Vegas got a lot because they spent a lot of money to get into the NHL. I can't remember the exact number, but you nowadays you spend a lot more money to get that expansion team, and so now they are setting up that expansion draft to help out that team be way more successful. And I think it's actually worked really well in Vegas because look at the fans. If the expansion draft was the same rules that it was back in the 90s and the 2000s, was Vegas ever going to be a team?
No, no.
No, they would have been a bottom feeder team. They would have never had the fans that generated there because when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, here in my little town, everyone loved Vegas because Derek Engelland, he was not born and raised here in Chetwynd, but he was hometown grown here. He played a lot of hockey here, and everyone loved Vegas because of that fact. And it just grew exponentially the fandom over the Vegas Golden Knights. And I don't think if they had that expansion draft that they had back in the day in the 90s, I don't think Vegas would have been the team that they are
No
today.
way. Not even close. Um,
They would have been having fourth lines on the top
but
line.
I think it was because of that Bettman was able to go to the owners and say, "Look what I mean by this. Like they were. It was hard to expand the NHL when you have teams that sucked as bad as the Sharks and all that stuff like that. The
Yeah,
product wasn't good. In order to keep
no,
them, they had to do clutch and grab. And let's face it, back in the clutch and grab days, hockey was not very fun to watch.
no, it
And
wasn't.
so,
I'm glad I didn't watch most of it. I wasn't even born during
yeah,
that time,
unfortunately,
and during the late
unfortunately, I was
late
watching it, and it was
2000s. So.
pretty sad.
It was like even looking over the highlights of like that time for hockey was boring. Like even a lot of the like you always had the same bottom feeder teams every single year. It was Atlanta, Columbus, Minnesota, San Jose. Like once they started getting better, they started getting up there. But like you don't want to see like that expansion team come into the league and then be a bottom feeder team for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You don't want that as a fan either because if you're seeing for example San Jose and you're living in San Jose and you're like, "Oh, awesome. San Jose's getting a new hockey team," and then you don't even know any of the players that's on that hockey team. How is that supposed to be fun for a fan? And then to watch your team lose for 10 years? I did that with the Oilers and that was no fun. It takes you right out of hockey. You don't want to watch the hockey game anymore if your team
Well,
sucks that
especially when
bad.
you're going into markets that are just learning about the game, like
Yep, that too.
that's why Vegas did what they did. That like I think Seattle can get away with it a little more, but I still think they're going to be competitive. They're going to have a competitive team,
Vegas,
but
yeah, Vegas did it so successfully with the way that they did to pump up the fans before the game. It was just a different atmosphere in that T-Mobile arena. It was something different that no one else was really doing except for, Carolina. Carolina did some fun stuff after the game, and Vegas seemed to do that before the
yeah.
game. It was like a party before the game, and then there was a party after the game, and that's why I think Vegas just worked so well is because they were successful right off the get-go. They were exciting to watch because I remember when they first came in, I was loving Vegas. I was loving the underdog story that this team brought to the table because they had a lot of exciting players with Marshall Sultan, Carlson, and Shea Theodore, and I loved all those players. And I just thought what Vegas did was so great. And the way that they set up the expansion, I know it might be, a little favorited towards Vegas, especially during the expansion draft. But I mean, if it creates entertaining hockey and this team's not a bottom feeder for years to come, that's all I care about.
How much of it was people underrating talent when it comes to Vegas, and how much ice time and trust was given to those? They definitely found incredible talent. Although
Hmm.
I think a lot of it had to do with organizations maybe overvaluing other aspects. Like Florida gave up Marchessault and Smith
Oh,
because they thought Dodonov
yeah.
was going to go off like Panarin. And
And same with Anaheim. Anaheim wanted to protect more defense, and
Theodore,
they decided to trade away Shea
wow,
Theodore.
I was
Right? They
blown
traded
away when
Clayton
they did
Stoner.
that. Yeah, I was,
They traded away Clayton Stoner to Vegas for draft considerations, and they picked Shea Theodore. That was insane.
yeah, because they didn't want to.
It was
Who
nuts.
did they not want to lose there? Was it
I think it was like Madsen, Lindholm. I think there was
Fowler,
Montour at the time,
Fowler,
and Fowler.
Manson,
Yes,
Lindholm. They didn't want to lose them. They wanted to lose Theodore instead, and they couldn't work out a deal with somebody before the draft. It's like, yeah, you bring up a very good point, Lauren. I I mean, I'm not. I guess I'm not. I guess I'm not correct about everything either. Everybody drops the ball, but how does every organization not see what? Ta-
there was some teams that didn't even do anything with Seattle. Like Colorado was a prime example. I'm pretty sure they're not going to do anything this upcoming off season. I'm pretty sure they're just going to
Lose
lose,
Graves
probably either Ryan Graves or somebody
or
else. I
what's that forward? Yeah,
what's his face?
25 goal scorer.
It's either 25 years of
25
age,
goals,
Comfer, JT
25
Comfer.
goal scorer. Maybe not, maybe Comfer, but I didn't really do a good close look at it.
Oh,
Donskoy,
Donskoy, Jonas
25
Donskoy.
goal scoring
Yes,
Donskoy. He's 29 years old. Uh, I because they got to get those forwards right. They have to have a certain amount of forwards.
he Jonas Donskoy is a sort of a power play specialist. I would call him. He was really really good on the power play this past season. I think that's where he got majority of his goals, and he's a good finisher though. I think he would be a solid
They
player for the
might be
Kraken
right. They
if they
might
were
be
to go
right
after
fed
him.
up with Andre Burakovsky. I love his shot, but he doesn't give much else anywhere else as well. He's kind of aloof. I don't know. I probably I don't think they would give him away for nothing like that though. But Jonas Donskoy, I think it's probably going to be Graves, but when I was doing it, there's so many defensemen available. It's hard.
Oh,
It's
so
hard
many.
to get any forwards, and Jonas Donskoy. It's going to be hard to get goal scorers, and you got to score some. Like you got to have a
Hmm.
lineup that if you got to have a lineup that you can teach a system with. If you're so bad that nobody can keep up, how do you get your system rolling? How you want to play and all that stuff like that if nobody can play? So
Yeah.
I think it's possible that Jonas Donskoy is the guy that goes there, and I think it's possible that Ryan Graves goes there. It's hard to find a 26-year-old that plays like he does every day for free. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
either one of those, but where was I? Well, I don't know where I was going. What were we talking about before we went off with Colorado?
Oh, we were talking about Vegas and the expansion draft and all that, and then we kind of got
Oh
into
yeah,
talking
right.
about
Yeah.
Seattle and how lucky Vegas got with
Yeah, I
the
don't
amount
know
of
if it
players
was
that they
lucky
got
or
from
it was
everyone.
just there was really good player under they were able to identify some really good players that the like Dadonov was considered really good, and he turned out to be not really good, and that was the big thing with Florida. That was huge, getting Marchessault and Smith from one team. That was crazy.
Oh my Lord, that built the whole line basically for them. Like, uh, it, you got basically your whole second line and or first line too. You could either go either way. And Marchessault, Smith, and Carlson. Columbus gave that guy away for free, a fourth line guy. No one knew he was going to be anything. Marchessault, same with him, and the same with um,
Smith.
Riley Smith. Riley Smith was solid, but people were saying he was going downhill, and he went off to Vegas and did amazing.
Yeah,
Oh, on the Anaheim fact, they protected Bieksa, Fowler, and Lindholm, and they got rid of Shea
I think
Theodore,
they had to. I
and
think they had to do
I
Fowler
think
and
they had to
Bieksa.
protect. I think they
They
did
had
because I think Bieksa
NMCs.
at the time had no
They
movement
had no
clause.
movement clauses. Yeah. And they just let Taylor. That's what I was trying. What we were going into is before that expansion draft. I don't understand how every GM couldn't identify how good Taylor was going to be. I not like maybe you won't say okay he's going to be a possible Norris candidate, but he was darn good and he was darn young, and they were going to lose him for nothing. You telling me you couldn't have dropped a second or two for that to get him? I just found that like how many?
And also, Florida went with the 440. You want to hear their protection list for that Vegas
Sure,
draft?
why not?
They protected. Now, be ready. Alexander Barkov, Nick Bukestad, Jonathan Huberdeau, Vincent Trocheck. Now wait for the defense. This is where it gets really funny. Aaron Ekblad, Alex Petrovic,
Oh my gosh!
Mark Pysyk, Keith Yandel, and James Reimer.
Wow.
They dropped the ball so hard. They'd even protect Riley Smith or Marchessault. They could have easily went with the 7-3. They could have went with the 7-3-1 and got way more forwards. They could have protected Marchessault. They could have protected Smith and just went with Ekblad. They left Demirs open at the time. Yeah, I mean that's just that's so bad. That is so bad. How do you protect Nick Bukestad, also Alex Petrovic, and Mark Pysyk? That that blows my mind.
My gosh, Pissick especially. Like, what are you doing? Like, I no, Petrovic. What?
Oh, Petrovic's
He
the
is
dumbest one.
horrible. He's always been horrible. And what did we give up? What did the Oilers give up for him? Like when
Like a pick,
Shirelli was like
Wyman or
it
something
was
like
it was
that.
a lot. It was like Weidman in a third or something like that. And the first game he played in Edmonton, he's like, he doesn't know what to do with the puck at all. Like he absolutely had
Nope.
no idea what to do with the puck. All you know what he looked like? You might not know this, but the first hockey video games, the
Mm-hmm. Yep.
defenseman That's what he looked like. They just went around
Yeah.
like this. Die, die. I'm going to hit you. Oh, you scored. Okay, off somewhere else then. And somebody has to direct him to the bench. Like, it was
Yeah.
terrible. And then, of course, the worst of the worst with that dude from Chicago. What's his name? May,
Oh,
I,
I think it was from Florida there.
no, he
What
played
what
in
am I forgetting?
Philadelphia, went to Chicago. We gave up. We gave up that college kid that's now in Buffalo.
Oh, oh no, Buffalo.
He's now in
No,
Buffalo. He went to Arizona and he's now in Buffalo. Not Cogliano.
Kajula.
Kajula.
Yes,
For
yes, yes,
you know who I'm
Kajula.
talking about?
Oh, Manning. Don't
Oh my.
Brandon Manning. That was such a bad move. I cannot believe the fact that we even picked up the guy that said on national TV that he did not care about hurting McDavid on live TV. He said that he didn't care. And we decided to pick him up. And then he goes off to Bakersfield and does a ton of dumb crap.
Yeah. Oh, there's a good question Sasha's brought up here. Will. Yeah. No. Okay. I'll continue. I'll finish that off. But we had the Oilers had Petrovich and Manning on the same roster on the ice at one time.
Yeah. I remember that year. I don't know what
Disgusting.
Shirelli was like trying to, I think he was like saying he was going to get fired, so he did like panic moves to try to fix the team. And I don't know
Hitch,
why the Manny
Hitchcock
move.
was coaching at the time, and he saw those guys on the ice, and he called up the management and said, get him out of here. He doesn't know what he's doing." For sure.
No, because Shirelli didn't. He didn't know what he was doing. He kept making impulse moves. If we actually had, still had Eberle, and still have Hall, this team would actually be a good team right now. Like that's the funny thing. We need wingers, and the thing is, we traded all our wingers away for basically nothing.
Yeah.
Eberle was sent off for Strom, which ended up being Sam Gagne, which ended up being Andreas Anthony, and that's done
No,
now.
wait. Eberle went for who? Strom ended up being Spooner.
Strom,
Spooner.
Spooner,
Yeah.
and then Spooner went for Sam Gagne because that was
Oh,
the
is that what that
Vancouver
was? And
trade
then
because
he.
we picked up Gagne,
Okay.
and then Gagne got sent off to Detroit for Anthony C and Ryan Kuffner, and then that's where it ended. That big trade tree from Chris Pronger, wouldn't you know it?
Oh gosh.
Eberle was that last resemblance of that Chris Pronger trade, and it ended up being Anthony C. That was a horrible trade tree.
Oh.
Horrible trade tree for the Oilers.
Sasha is asking, or mentioning, or saying he's making a statement that Vegas will never win a cup. And I think that's very possible that their window is closing pretty hard unless they get a number one center or do something like that. I think they can still win one though, but they really, really, really need to get a center. Like really, really need to get one.
Yeah, like an Eichel sort of style. I mean,
Somehow.
they funny enough they did have it with Suzuki and stuff like
Yeah.
that. If they kept Suzuki, they could have actually had a pretty solid core moving forward. But I mean, they wanted to push for it hard for playoffs, and the one thing that they have left exposed is that centerman position. They haven't really done anything. They've done little bits with picking up Stevenson, and that's really it. And what Carlson, and they haven't really touched up on that center core. They haven't done anything to it point, which is kind of weird because I thought they would touch up on that the first, but they went after Pietrangelo. That's another move which didn't make any sense to me was the Pietrangelo move because analytically he didn't have the greatest year. And watching him this year, I thought he was worse than what he was in St. Louis. But why not sign Pietrangelo and maybe build depth around your entire team instead of throwing $8 million at a player when you already have it in Fleury and so many more?
Yeah, it's starting to get pretty dicey there in Vegas. I even thought the Pacioretty deal when they gave up Suzuki, I was wincing like, where are you going to get a centerman here, guys? And then you get Peter Angelo, and all of these people, all of these guys are on the edge of being too old, right?
Yep.
They're all declining contracts, all of them. Like, there could be one heck of a rebuild going on. The rebuild could be just absolutely horrid in Vegas.
I don't think it's going to be too hard in Vegas, honestly, because I think the worst contract that they're going to have to deal
Oh,
with
Pacioretty's
is
only 2 years. It's not
Petrangelo.
too bad.
Pacioretty's only 2 years. Carlson's locked up and Stone's locked up for a long time, but I could see those
That's
guys
that'll
producing for a
those will be
long
fine.
time,
Yeah.
right? Like I think the only contract you really would have to worry about is
The,
Pietrangelo or Petrangelo. I think that's the only guy you have to
that
worry
one
about.
might hurt. Shea Theodore is on a great contract.
Well, I mean, Norris Trophy probably could be a future Norris Trophy candidate. Is making 5.2. I would say that's a huge steal. I bet Anaheim's wishing they had Shea Theodore right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And one thing they could do, and I really like Riley Smith, but he's only got 1 year left. They could probably find a home for him, and that'll free up room to get a center. Alex
Yeah, that's what we were talking
Alex
about.
Tuck can go up into that, and but the question, as we've already brought up, is there's only so many centers out there. There's not really many
Yeah,
centers available right now.
I think we were talking about if Eichel got sent to Rangers, we were talking about Strome potentially going to Vegas. I think we were talking about, but like that's the thing. Like what we were talking about earlier on in the show with Boston. There's not a lot of centermans, and there's going to be a lot of people going after those centermans. And wasn't there last year a decent amount of centermans? I felt like there was, but I think I think that was the biggest focus that Vegas needed to focus on is that they needed more depth, especially up on that center. Because once they lost Stevenson, they were playing Tuck as the first line center. It's like, how is that ever going to work for you when you're having, your center core is Nicholas Roy as your third line centerman and Thomas Nosek? It's not going to work for you. You got to look for, to build that team deeper, especially for that center core. Defensively, I think they could have went without Alex Petrangelo. Um, I would have liked to see Shea Theodore, McNabb, and Martinez keep playing there, and then they could have added maybe another right-handed guy instead of
Cheaper.
locking up Petrangelo for $8.8
I
million
think that was pretty
dollars.
overkill. I agree. I agree with you. Now he's saying that he can hear you on my end. I have no idea how that's possible.
Maybe like an echo. Because what? When did they trade away Colin Miller? Because I felt like that was a dumb move as well. Because Colin Miller wasn't that bad for Vegas, and they dumped him off.
It's a teeny echo. I don't know why there would be an echo at all because I just looked at all my stuff. Only me. Okay. But it doesn't matter. Yeah, I just thought the Peter Angelo contract was overkill. But that would be what I would do. I would. There's somebody. They could find a home for Smith, and then they could trade for. Maybe they could find a home for Smith and get a center back, but not likely. Centers are
I
at a
mean, they could probably, yeah, that's,
centers are at a
yeah, I don't know, it's gonna be hard.
centers are at a premium this year. Like there is not many centers available out there to be able to, unless you're going to get Beninos or somebody like that. But an actual offensive guy, like unfortunately, one of the better centers out there that they could possibly get would be Sean Monahan, and that tells you how the dearth level of centers that are available out there. There's not too many available.
Oh man, that would stink for them to go after Sean Monahan. It's basically, I think Vegas, right now, I think they're just gonna rely big time on maybe Peyton Krebs jumping up, or Cody Glass jumping up to be, one of those big time centers because they don't have the salary cap to do it. They can't, reverse that Petrangelo contract, no matter how much we would like it to be, reversed, because it definitely was overkill. They didn't need him. They could have just easily went after some other defenseman because they already had that great defenseman in Shea Theodore. They had a number one guy in him, and they could have just kept riding with him and built a decent core around him and then a really good offensive core. And I thought that could have been a really solid team, but I don't know. I think Vegas has a lot of work ahead of them this offseason. A lot of work. to figure out what they need to do. And thankfully, they don't have to worry about the expansion draft too. So
That's one good
they're
thing.
not participating in it, so they don't have to really worry about it. So, but they would probably like the expansion draft because they probably wouldn't mind dumping off a contract or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't see any centerman here that would fit the bill for them at all. Like that you could trade a winger and get a center. I'm looking down here. There's nothing. Like it's,
And you would have to find a team that would want to trade away centerman and need a winger back. Like wingers compared to centerman is such a decrease in the
yeah,
value. Like like you would have to be doing it in free agency, and like I think we were saying, like Granlund would be an option,
that's
Stasty would be an
possible. You could
option
trade
again.
Smith for a pick to someone
Yep.
and then sign Granlund. That wouldn't be bad. I don't mind that. That's all. That's
No, I don't
all
mind
they
that
really
either.
need. Yeah, that would actually be pretty good.
And Granlund could play anywhere.
Yeah, I like that
Because
too.
Granlund could play on the fourth line, and or on the third line if you need to. If you want to keep Stevenson up on that top line, you could have Granlund play a little bit lower. It's just gonna suck. I think just the depth, just in general, is gonna be pretty crappy for the Vegas Golden Knights. Like, you got a great top six, and then the depth wise, you just don't got a lot of people there. I mean, Nicholas Roy wasn't too bad if he continues to jump up, and that's the same with Peyton Krebs. How well will he do next year? Will
Yeah.
he be playing at full power next year? Carrier, Colasar, and Reeves. Will Colasar and Carrier keep on improving from this past upcoming season and continue improving that depth as well? I think Vegas could potentially be, another great playoff team once again next year, especially if White Cloud keeps taking a jump. Same with Nicholas Hague. And if they keep on improving, that defensive core could be very scary, and they might not even need to do anything with that defensive core this upcoming
I don't think
season.
they need to do
Um,
anything to defense, but I do like that idea of trading a winger like that and
yes.
bringing in a guy like Granlund on a two
Well,
2 year if you can get him on a 2 year if nobody's going to overpay for him right now. Get him on a 2 year and then Krebs and Glass can fight it out for when he's
yeah,
no
because
longer there anymore.
they got $6 million. You get rid of Smith, you get what now $11 million. You have enough to go after centerman to sign him at maybe $4 or $5 million, and then you have enough to sign some depth for that third line because you're definitely going to need it after losing Tuck, or not losing Tuck, but
yeah.
Tuck going up to the second line and losing Smith. You're definitely going to need to improve that depth, but I think they definitely need a centerman. I don't know if they're going to make a trade or not, but I think they're going to have to if they want to make some big time moves. But I think the realistic thing that they might do is Fleury. I think Fleury will definitely be gone this year. I have a feeling 1 year left at $7 million. I think someone will be right on the scooping of Fleury because there's, like we were saying, there's not a lot of good goalies.
Yep.
And if a team loses out on that race, for example, maybe Colorado loses out on the goalie that maybe they want, so maybe they're like, all right, let's go for Marc-Andre Fleury for the year, and let's rely on him with Frank Kuntz. That could be something that could go. I mean, I think Fleury most likely will be traded this year since there's not a lot of big goalies compared to what there was last year. Last year was a goalie hotspot last year. There were so many goalies available, and I think this year will be a little bit easier to get rid of Fleury.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a team like, there's a few teams there that I wouldn't even mind losing some depth for like just a 1 year bang it with. If I were the Washington Capitals, I would try to lose a contract to get a guy for Fleury.
TJ Oshie.
Yeah, like lose.
Hear tons of rumors about
Yeah,
him.
I don't. It's hard, but they got Mantha there now. I guess they got to roll with it. I'm still not sure about Mantha,
Hey,
but
what about Kuznetsov?
yeah,
'Cause I've been
Kuznetsov's
hearing
got
rumors
to
about
go.
traded. Do you think Kuznetsov for Fleury?
Oh, wait a second. Yeah. Wait, how would I mean, geez, he likes the partying though. I don't think
That is the big thing with
going to
Kuznetsov
Vegas
is that he
going
loves
to
the
Vegas
party.
may not help that.
No, but if he does return back to the great player that he once was, this could be a huge pickup for the Tampa or for Vegas, right? You dump off Fleury, you get Kuznetsov back in the deal. The problem is with Kuznetsov is that he has a longer contract,
Yeah.
4
They'd have
years,
to give up plus. They'd
and
almost have to give up.
it's such a big
They'd
miss.
almost have to give up Fleury plus for a guy that they don't think. I don't think they're going to trade. No, they might not have to because they're not. Who's going
No,
to take
no,
Kuznetsov
I
with
don't
all the
think they would have
problems they
to.
had? Yeah.
No, no one,
No one.
no one is.
Yeah.
I think your best bet would probably be, I mean, Vegas. I don't even know if Vegas would want Kuznetsov either. That'd be the biggest thing. So I don't know. It is an idea, but that would be a pretty far reach, especially for the Caps. But I do see. I've been hearing rumors about Oshie, so maybe Washington could be a possibility where Fleury could end up going into next season. But I think they might be relying on Samsonov again and Vitek Venasek. I think that's what they might be going after again next year.
Uh, yeah, see, I don't like that. If I'm them, I'm going like their window is pretty much non-existent. So you might as well get a Vezina caliber goaltender. I love that idea. Trade Kuznetsov. I mean, that's certainly would be a huge upgrade if Vegas can find a way to get Kuznetsov's head in the game, straight in the game. I mean, playing with Stone, and I mean, that would be a fantastic
Man,
for them. But
like if they could do if Washington's dream offseason, in my opinion, would be getting Ovi back on a very cheap deal for like a year or two, talking to him about like, hey, let's bring in some more cups into the Capitals. Like come back here for the next 2 years cheap, $5-6 million so we could go after some other players. Maybe dump off TJ Oshie, maybe even Kuznetsov if you can. Dump off some more salary cap so you can just keep building this team up, build up that depth going into next year, maybe even pick up a goalie in Fleury. I think this team could be sick going into next year if they were to do that. Go after Fleury, trade away one of their back contract players, build up the depth a little bit more. Washington could be a really killer team going into next year if they're able to all do that.
just like like if I'm a team whose window is closing and I'm looking to win right now, why am I going to keep on going with Samsonov? If you got an option to get a caliber goaltender like Fleury, freaking
And
no doubt
I
about
think
it.
that's what their plan was with Lundqvist. I think that's what their plan was with bringing him in, was to be that solid, 1B option, 1A option to Samsonov. But everything went wrong, I think, for Washington, especially for their goaltending, because they lost Lundqvist right off the beginning, and then they also lost Samsonov as well, and they had to rely on Venasek and Craig Anderson as their goaltending duo, which is not something you wanted to rely on. That was like your worst possible option for the Washington Capitals. And even when Samsonov did return in the playoffs, he did decent, but not what we were fully expecting from him. And I think Fleury, if you were to able to pick him up, I think that'd be such a huge change. And um, would they maybe be thinking about maybe bringing back in Lundqvist next season if he's healthy and ready
Well,
to go?
that's the thing that would kind of muddle things a tad. You already did that, and now we had her, so you're kind of walking away from Lundqvist now. But sorry to hurt your feelings, but Fleury almost won the Vezina last year. We got a chance to get him, so you can go somewhere else. Uh,
And Lundqvist hasn't put out that great of numbers over the past 2 years too, and he just went and did a huge surgery.
yeah,
So, oh, and that also New Jersey lost Crawford right before the season as well. That was really tough for New Jersey as well. We actually had high hopes on New Jersey, especially with Crawford, and then Crawford went down with an injury, and we're like, oh,
yeah. And the good thing about that for Vegas is they wouldn't have to retain. Where if they send Fleury anywhere else, almost assuredly they would have to retain. Now, if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs and it doesn't work out for Washington, why not? Tell Anderson to go off you go. But the thing is, does Fleury want to go to Toronto? He's got that option, right?
yes, I think he does have a no trade clause, something like that. I mean, there's so many teams that could want him. I mean, the Oilers, Maple Leafs, the Caps would probably love him. The Penguins, I mean, they would probably be
Penguins, oh yeah,
in on the
they should be,
conversation as well,
especially if there's retain.
right?
Like somebody, they're not going to win with Jari by the looks of it. That's for sure.
No. I mean, the biggest problem is salary cap wise. They have to deal with a lot of salary cap there in Toronto. So, or in Pittsburgh, I mean. So we'll have to see what they do to clear um some cap space up to pick up Fleury, because I think right now they only have 3.2 million going into this off season right now. So they would need to clear up some cap space, either trading maybe Jason Zucker or one of their defensemen, because they got $26 million built up into their defensemen. It's almost like San Jose 2.0.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, for our last 5 minutes, we could answer that question. What are the top 8 goaltenders in the league? I don't know why he chose the words eight or the number 8, but that would be pretty difficult to do in 5 minutes. But most of them are pretty easy. Vasilevsky, Hellebuck, uh, Fleury. You'd have to put Fleury there right now.
Yeah.
Rask, if he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, I'm gonna go with one that's gonna be off the board. I still say Bernier is one of the top 8 in the league. I think he is, if he was given the opportunity on a better team. Uh, I,
I would probably go Vazzy. Flurry's up there. I think he just breaks into the top 8 because he wasn't that good last year, and he just got really good again this year. So I probably put him in the cusp of the top 8. You put probably Rask up there. Varlamov I would probably put up there. He's put up some
how
decent
about Kemper?
years. Kemper as well. I would probably put him up there. Hellebuck. You might even be able to add in
Gibson.
Saros this
Oh, you
upcoming
got to put
season.
Gibson.
Gibson as well. Blackwood can even probably march into there. Laner can march into there if
How
he
many? How
actually
many have
played
we
a full
just did
season.
here? I didn't count.
Probably
I didn't
tons.
count them. Like especially in order, I don't think I could do it in order. But we got Vasilevsky, Varlamov. I wouldn't put Laner in there. He hasn't did enough yet. Although if you watch him, he should be probably.
I
Not
think
really
he's up
his
in the top
fault,
8.
but you can't really put Price in there though. Even though he had an amazing playoffs, his overall you
No,
can't really
you
put him
can't
in
put
there, right?
Price in there. Um, he was decent this year, but I don't know if I could really put him in there just because of the fact of the past 2 years. Just right now, he's not that good of a goalie. Like talking about right now, goalies like Bazzi, Fleury, Grubauer, Hellebuck, Saros,
Soros, I forgot about
Varlamov.
Soros. Yeah,
Saros could possibly be, I think, almost top 5 with the way like how phenomenal he
the way
played
he
this
played
year.
this year. But I mean, there? What are the? Is it career? Is it the last 5 years, or was it just how they were playing at the end of the year? Like how are you doing it? Right, that's a lot of the things you'd have to put in there. But at
Hmm.
the end of the year, Saros for sure. He was insane.
Yeah.
He was insane.
Oh, insane.
There's
Insane.
a lot of
Is he
there
still?
starts to be a lot
Oh.
of ties when you get into there. I mean, a guy that will likely be in there real soon, and you could actually make a case already is when he's playing at the top of his game is Demko in Vancouver.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a beast when he's perfectly on. Shesterkin.
Yep. Him as well.
So
He's going to be really good as
how do
well.
you put the top 8 of those ones that we just mentioned? Like, what are the criteria? That's the word I was looking for. Uh, You take Fleury in a heartbeat. Yeah, Fleury's got to be there after the year he had, and pretty much overall, actually.
Well, I would take Fleury in a heartbeat for if I was Colorado. I'd be looking
Oh,
into it.
Fleury in
I'm
Colorado,
pretty sure
yeah.
Joe Sakic. I'm pretty sure Joe Sakic would definitely be looking into something like that. It'd help the team out tremendously, honestly.
That would be pretty insane.
It would be.
Yeah. Oh, we're almost done here now. All right. Well, stream problems aside,
Mm-hmm.
there are more good.
It's pretty
There's
solid.
a lot of good goaltenders out there, man. There is.
Oh yeah, we forgot to quickly talk about the scores for this game upcoming
Oh
today.
yeah, we didn't do the scores. We only got 2 minutes, so we don't have many people in here at the moment. So
I mean, we all know who's going to win. Tampa Bay,
Yeah, I think that's why it's like
most
pretty
likely.
much redundant. That.
Mm.
Anyways, again, I forgot to do it when we had more people in the chat. We'll be back. I'll be next week. First of all, also, I'll say this all week, but Friday I will not be here. There'll be no stream on Friday. I'm taking my son to Banff for 3 days,
Ooh.
so that'll be fun. And next week, Tuesday, Thursday, put this in your journals. Write it down, everybody. I'll be doing 2 evenings, and I'll tell you the time as we get closer. More than likely, it's going to be like 5:30 Mountain to 7:30 Mountain, which would be 7:30 to 9:30 Eastern. So we'll be doing that twice a week, and then my regular show Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. All right, Peyton, you got anything? You just put out a video on your doing video your hockey video games, right?
Yeah, my franchise mode with
Franchise mode.
the
That's
Columbus
what
Blue
I'm saying.
Jackets. We just uploaded an episode. I think it was episode 14. Kind of went through majority of the season for the Columbus Blue Jackets, as hopefully they'll make it to the playoffs here soon. But it was a really exciting episode, so I would definitely check it out.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to do more. If I do evenings, that'll be fun too. Then we got, of course,
Mm-hmm.
free agency coming up, the draft. It's going to be the expansion draft. All of that's going to be right here on the Steel Flyers All Sports Network for you to appreciate and enjoy the fine programming. So have a great day, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow at this time, and I don't know who we'll have a mystery guest. I think Steele said he might be on. That would be pretty cool. Have a great day,
Ooh,
everybody.
that would be.
Okay, bye.